So last season, the New York Knicks were one of the better stories in the NBA last season, finishing 50 and 32, dealing with a whole bunch of injuries from missed games from main contributors like Julius Randle, who was probably on his way to making an All-NBA team. I'd say probably third All-NBA team. OG Anunoby, who was the big trade acquisition during the season for the Knicks, and Mitchell Robinson, who went down multiple times throughout the season and postseason. Three guys who are key to the team's success, missed plenty of games, but they still managed to finish with the second best record in the Eastern Conference, led by Jalen Brunson and his Villanova friends Dante DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, and also a career season from Isaiah Hartenstein. This Knicks team was able to hold it together, but when they were healthy in January, they were the best team in basketball, finishing 14-2 that month. That was the most wins in a month they had had since 1994, which was obviously one of the times that they made the finals. They were one of the best defensive teams that month, going from the worst defensive team in December to the best in January, and you can only point that to one thing, and that's the OG Anunoby effect. Lastly, in that month, they were easily the best team in the NBA. Had the highest net rating. Only team behind them that was close was the Cleveland Cavaliers that month. And the Knicks just looked like a contender. They went from a mediocre team in that month of December to a contending caliber team in the month of January. And now, they deal with injuries and they go through the offseason and they made their move. This is it. They made their big splash. They added Mikal Bridges last season, who had a down year for the crosstown rival Brooklyn Nets. He reunites with the Nova Boys once again, and they gave up a lot. It was a hefty price to acquire Mikal Bridges, and it's clear, like I mentioned earlier, this is the final piece. This is it. There will be no other star trade unless something crazy happens and one of the Knicks' core guys gets traded for another core caliber player. This looks like the move, and I like it. This is why I believe the Mikal Bridges trade makes the Knicks a legitimate threat to win it all this upcoming season. So let's look at the pros. This gives New York easily one of the top wing duos in basketball as a whole, but especially to match up with the wing tandem of Brown and Tatum, it just makes sense. You could see these two teams matching up in Eastern Conference Finals, and what better duo, defensively especially, would you want to go against those guys on an island? They can hold their weight, and Mikal Bridges being on this team is huge because before, they didn't have a second big wing like that. It was Josh Hart guarding other wings, and he's just too small. So giving them that length, that kind of size on the perimeter is huge. Also gives the Knicks a piece that fits the makeup of the team. They're all in their prime. They all got some chemistry already. And that includes Mikal, who wasn't even on the team last season, but obviously we all know. He's got chemistry, and he can be at his most efficient self. He's going to be more of an off-the-ball kind of player like he was in Phoenix, especially during that 64-win season back in 22. Very good spot-up guy, catch and shoot, attacking closeouts, great in transition. Those kind of things is what I expect from Mikal Bridges on the offensive side of the floor. Not too much on-ball creation, but he will be a piece in that puzzle because they could use some of his on-ball creation. It's not like he's horrible at it. It's just he wasn't a first-option caliber player, And that leads to my next point, which is with that ability to score, it can be huge because he'll be able to provide a second-unit boost. He obviously is not going to come off the bench, but he'll be able to get staggered in with some bench guys when Brunson and Randle are off the floor, and he can be an initiator with those lineups, playing with his former Nova guys and DiVincenzo and Hart and Deuce McBride, who was a key contributor to last season's run. I think Mikal Bridges can easily just go in there and not make things as stagnant as they were last season with that bench lineup, because when Brunson came out of games last year for the Knicks, it wasn't going well. Couldn't score, a lot of slow possessions leading to bad shots, and I think Mikal Bridges can provide some of that boost that they might need to maybe just make the bench a little more competent on the offensive side of the floor and still be able to maintain a high defensive ceiling with that kind of lineup as well. Also gives this Knicks team insurance for OG Anunoby, because OG, obviously, I'm not predicting the future or anything, but if I had to bet, I'm going to assume he's going to miss some games. The track record says so. And it just makes sense that with Mikal Bridges being here and him being kind of the opposite, being an Iron Man, he hasn't missed a game in his career yet, even though with Tibbs, you never know. Mikal Bridges will be able to step right in, play his spot when OG needs to miss games, and just, keep the thing rolling, keep the train going, and be able to make this team continue to flow in the right state. Rather than last season, you saw when OG Anunoby went down, this team was not the same. And that's even with Jalen Brunson being on the floor. Even though Jalen Brunson's obviously their best player, OG Anunoby, you could argue, was their most impactful player. The stats back that up. And the eye test kind of backs it up as well. I mean, we saw it in the playoffs. He went down after the Knicks were up 2-0. They really never looked the same. So it kind of proves my point, and it just shows that Mikal Bridges can be some insurance for that if it does happen, or most likely when it happens for a certain amount of time. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I kind of expect an upgraded version of what he was in Phoenix. I think there should be a little more on-ball creation compared to what he was doing in Phoenix for the main part of his career there. I think he's learned, throughout that time, especially being in Brooklyn. It just didn't click. A lot of people, went after him in Brooklyn for being a lackluster defender compared to what he was in Phoenix, but it's hard to be a number one option caliber player and play all defensive team caliber defense. With the Knicks, he'll be the third guy, and I expect him to get back to that all defensive team kind of defense when he's on this team. You could even see potential lineups of him being in small ball, which I would love to see. It might not be Tibbs' strong suit because he never wants to really go with those things, but if he can, it could be the Knicks' best lineup of Brunson, DiVincenzo, Anunoby, or Bridges, and Randle. I like that lineup a lot. I think it'll be good on both sides of the ball. The rebounding might take a little hit, and that's one of Tibbs' favorite kind of things for his teams, is to rebound the basketball at a super high level. But defensively, I think they'll be able to hold weight. And on the offensive side of the ball, there's just going to be space everywhere, especially for Brunson and Randle to just go out there and cook. So I'm clearly interested in that to see if he ever goes to it. And it could be a huge lineup come playoff time if he ever does go for it and, builds that lineup's chemistry over time. And when they need it most, maybe it could really change some things for this team. As for the cons, I mentioned earlier, Dante DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, those guys. I think DiVincenzo's minutes might be a con in this trade because I mentioned a small ball lineup, but I also mentioned Tibbs most likely is not going to go to it firsthand. He's not. And that's going to result in some lost minutes for some guys, particularly Dante DiVincenzo. Dante DiVincenzo last season was easily a great story for this team. Had a career season, had one of, if not the best shooting season in Knicks history. But I'm just going to assume right now that Josh Hart is going to get the bulk of the minutes coming off the bench. Deuce McBride obviously isn't going to play a lot, backing up Jalen Brunson. And Precious Achiuwa will get his minutes because, him and Mitchell Robinson. Mitch isn't a guy that's going to play 30-plus minutes. Unless it's a good day. Then you might see it happen, but most of the time, you're probably not. If you look at that track record and you look at his minutes per game, Precious will back him up. So it leaves DiVincenzo out there on an island, and Bridges is going to play a lot of minutes, and Anunoby is going to play a lot of minutes. So where's the minutes coming for DiVincenzo? Is he going to be at 18 minutes a game? 19 minutes a game? Kind of sucks because, like I mentioned earlier, career season. Great shooting season. And for him to be coming off the bench might suck. So I'm kind of interested to see as time goes on what Tibbs is able to do with the flexibility of this roster to be able to make things work and try his best to just give the guys that need minutes their fair share of minutes. Don't just go by the book or what he's used to doing. I want to see him be a little more flexible with those lineups, a little bit more flexible with off days, giving guys like OG Anunoby rest. That kind of thing could be huge. So definitely interested to see that. Another con might be the missing of Isaiah Hartenstein. Obviously Hartenstein went to Oklahoma City. But I think with Mikal Bridges, it could kind of get turned into a pro, because even though you're missing him, Mikal Bridges will be able to provide a scoring punch anyways. Might not be the same way Hartenstein did with his playmaking, but Bridges can provide some on-ball creation, and I'm going to assume he's going to be efficient this season compared to what he was, last season in Brooklyn. So I'm definitely interested to see what's going to happen with this Knicks team. I think for sure Mikal Bridges is the missing piece. This is the piece that can make the Knicks an actual title contender for the first time since the 90s, really. 2012, 2013, this team was good, but they were old. Miami was around. LeBron was in his prime. Never felt like a real shot. Where with this team, I could definitely see a world where they go out there, they play Boston in the conference finals, and they knock off the Celtics. I'm not saying they're going to win the finals, but I think it's a real shot that they can go out there and probably break the curse, break the drought of, what is it now, 50 plus years since the Knicks won their last title. Going to be a fun ride for this Knicks team for sure, and I can't wait to see it. Anyways, that's going to do it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You can go follow me on Twitter down in the link below. This has been the checkup, and I'll see y'all next video. Peace.